I'm James, and this is Action and Adventure Tips. The whole purpose of this channel is to help you, the content creator, be a little bit more accurate in your content creation. Specifically, I'm looking at writers, novelists. A lot of crime and thriller novelists seem to get it wrong, so hopefully we'll be able to get it right here. If you're a director, maybe you might want to watch this, a movie director, an audiobook narrator. Let's say you work in the gaming industry, maybe as a game developer, an artist. Hopefully some of the stuff that I'm going to be presenting on this channel will be beneficial to you. Because the last thing we all know is that when you write something and it's wrong, people will hammer you. How do I know? Well, I'm a novelist. I've probably gotten one thing definitely wrong, and that was I thought hyenas were canines. One of the reviews, they proved otherwise. So I learned from my mistake, and hopefully you'll learn and be able to write or create content without making those kinds of mistakes. So how did this all come about? Well, I was attending a conference in Las Vegas, and a whole bunch of us were talking, and we got to joking about all the times we have seen writers who are new to the field write about clicking the safety off on a Glock. Here's a clue. You can't do that. And they will get hammered by reviewers saying, "You idiot, don't you know the Glock doesn't have a safety?" Well, guess what? The Glock does have a safety. It's just not one you can turn on and off. So, today's topic, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Glock so that when you're writing about the Glock, which is one of the most predominant firearms in the field, especially in law enforcement, you're going to know what you're talking about. So, first off, let's pull up a standard Glock. This here is a Glock 23, and it is loaded because that's how I keep my firearms. This is the cartridge, and now it's no longer loaded. If you look inside, you can see there's nothing in the chamber. And if you look through the magazine well, you can see there's nothing in the magazine well. So the question is, where is the safety on a Glock? And we'll do a quick tour of buttons. First off, you've got this little button that's right here. If I can see it. Yep, right there. That is actually not a safety. That is called the slide stop lever. That holds this little bad boy back. So if I release it, the slide goes forward. The slide, by the way, is this big thing on top, and we're going to get into that in a different video. So what's the other button up here? We got one right here. That's not a safety either. That's actually a magazine catch, and I'll show you what I mean. If you watch as I load, it pushes it out. Now, there is a round in the chamber. I don't want a round in the chamber, so as you can see, I'll just push this button, and the magazine comes out, leaving me with, once again, a totally empty firearm. Now, 4 rules of firearm safety, by the way, in case you haven't learned them by now. Every adult should know them, but you probably don't if you've never been exposed to firearms. First rule is this thing right here. Keep your finger off the trigger. Actually, that's not the first rule. The first rule is you treat this thing like it's loaded all the time. And that's because unloaded guns cause more accidents than loaded guns do. Why? Oh, it's not loaded. Bang, it's loaded. Treat it if it's loaded all the time until you prove otherwise. Second rule, keep your finger, or as we like to call it, the booger stick, off the trigger. This part right here, the bang stick. So, finger off the bang stick. Third rule, always keep it pointed in a safe direction. You never point a gun at anything until you're ready to shoot. So, safe direction is rule number 3. Always, and rule number 4 is know what you're going to shoot and what's behind it. Because bullets are like emails. Once you send them, you can't call them back. So the last thing you want to do is having some bullet flying off into the nether regions and wiping out some poor hapless soul who just happens to be a mile away or something. Well, not really a mile away, although some bullets will travel that far. I've actually hit targets at 1,200 yards. Not quite a mile, but close to it. Okay, so a little bit of... So where is the safety? Well, if that's not the safety, and if that's not the safety, and you can see there's nothing else really there, where is it? Well, the safety is actually in the trigger right here. You know, I'll pull up as close as I can. You see this little part right here that just kind of pushes in? That's the safety. So you've got 2 safeties on the Glock. One right here, and then one on the trigger. Now, the only way this firearm is going to fire is if I actually pull the trigger. Now, I'm looking around. Is there a safe place to point this and pull the trigger? Yes, that way. Why? Because I'm at home and nobody else is. You aim, you squeeze. And if you heard that little click, that was the striker, or the spring hitting the striker, which would go on to fire the bullet out. So that's it. I'll show you what happens if you try to pull the trigger back without pulling on the trigger. Safety. You can see I am trying to do that very much with no force, not getting anywhere. All right, here we go. Ready? Finger on. About 8 pounds of pressure. Click. There you go. And that's how the safety works on a Glock. So when you're writing or you're creating a video game or you're directing a movie, make sure you don't have the protagonist or the antagonist clicking the safety on or off a Glock, because as you've just noticed, you can't. You do have to engage the safety though to fire the Glock, so keep that in mind. All right, a little bit of history about the Glock. Just set that down. The Glock was developed back in the 1970s by a guy named Gaston Glock under bid for the Austrian Army. About 1979, he applied for a patent. It was his 17th patent application. The first firearm is called the Glock 17. It holds 17 rounds. So everybody said, oh, it's a Glock 17 because it holds 17 rounds. No, it's a Glock 17 because it was the 17th patent. So there you have it. This model is a Glock 23. There's no way this thing is going to hold 23 rounds unless I've got an extended magazine, which I don't. I don't need it. So, what are some myths about the Glock? Well, the first myth is that it's completely undetectable. The myth of the Glock being undetectable by metal detectors? Total horse pocky. It is. Let me show you something. This is a metal detector probe that a good writer friend of mine loaned it to me. And here it goes. It's warming up. I guess it's finding stuff. What's it finding? Ammunition. Okay, so as you can tell, that works. Here is a regular revolver. Can we find it? Oh yeah, there you go. So yes, you can tell it actually works. Now for the Glock. Will it be detectable? Yeah, it's detectable. And why? Well, because the slide is actually made of metal. And what is the slide? I have to pull the trigger for this one. This part right here is the slide. This thing is made out of metal and it has a spring inside it. And if that wasn't enough, the ammunition is also composed of brass, lead, and who knows what else. Maybe some copper too. So, myth number one, completely destroyed. Myth number two, the Glock doesn't have a safety. Well, we've already talked about that. The Glock has a safety. It has two. It has your brain, hopefully engaged, and the trigger safety. The third myth, sometimes some writers will write about this, a decocking lever. A decocking lever is simply a device that allows you to decock the firearm so it's no longer in the cocked position and ready to fire. H&K, I believe, makes one like that, but the Glock, no, it doesn't have one. Once that bad boy is cocked and locked, it's ready to go. So forget about the decocking lever. And finally, one of the big myths is that it's a plastic gun. Okay, well, we've got to break it apart again. Why? Because I have to show you stuff. This part right here is what everybody calls plastic, because it's not metal. Let's see if I can actually, but does that mean there's no metal in it? Yeah, there is. There's the striker and the guides, and as you can see, completely detectable. This is a polymer, which is, composites of all sorts of materials. And so it's a very strong composite. It'll last for hundreds of years. I know that if you're an environmentalist and you don't like plastic, well, yeah, it's going to be around a while. So that's the basic myths about the Glock. Remember, the safety is on the trigger. You cannot click it on or off. It's not made out of undetectable material. And it does have a safety. It's just not one that you can click on or off. You know, and it's kind of funny is one of my best friends actually wrote his novel, and he had the writer click the safety off, and I'm just sitting there going, oh, no, how can you make that mistake? And he got hammered in the reviews. I didn't say anything because I hadn't read to that part, but other people did, and, well, they lit into him. He's since revamped that. And another author that I really enjoyed, John Grisham, actually wrote about the Glock in probably several of his novels, but the one I was reading was based in 1970, and now all of a sudden somebody's pulling out a Glock and starts firing it. Hell of a time travel. So just remember, the Glock didn't come out until the 1980s. It has a safety. You can't turn it on or off. And it is detectable. Other than that, there's not much to say about it at this point in time. I'll be making another video concerning the parts of this firearms that hopefully you'll be able to incorporate in your writing. So just remember, you know, you can say one thing in dialogue, but in the rest of the novel, when you're describing, being descriptive, make sure you do it right. All right. Remember, hit like and subscribe. And if you want to follow me, I'm at jamespeet.com. And stay safe out there.